Ask anyone who's out there in Richmond, California, or El Segundo, California, where the Chevron refinery spews toxics every day. Climate change is real. It's human-induced. We can't go back. So what we need to do is keep fossil fuels in the ground. And the scientists have told us this. The scientists have said in order to avert climate chaos, we have to keep at least 80% of fossil fuels in the ground. Indigenous people that we work with across the Amazon agree, and they've been doing that. For over 25 years, we've seen indigenous people across the Amazon keep oil companies, keep militaries, keep governments out of their territories. I particularly think of the people, the very brave, courageous, heroic people that I have the honor to work with from Sarayaku. It's a Quechua people from Sarayaku in the heart of the Ecuadorian Amazon. They have kept oil companies off their land for nearly 30 years. And they did this before they knew that all the scientific evidence, before the scientists had confirmed that we need to keep 80% of the fossil fuels in the ground. The point of this is to say that indigenous people have the knowledge too. And what gives me hope right now is that the scientific knowledge and the indigenous knowledge is coming together. And it has been coming together. I have had the honor to travel to many international climate conferences with indigenous leaders. And as we come together with climate leaders and climate scientists from around the world, we're actually saying the same thing. And yes, of course, it bums us out to think that this new elected government can take that all away. But we're not going to let them take that away, right? We need to stand with those who are defending our water, those who are defending our rainforests, those who are defending our communities, from Standing Rock to Sarayaku. Recently, I was with Patricia Walenga, Nina Walenga, and Aura Tegria from Colombia at the IUCN. And we were promoting for the protection of sacred areas like the rainforests, the most biological place on the planet, biologically diverse place on the planet. And one of the things that we kept repeating, and I kept hearing, and people kept cheering about, was that indigenous people are 4% of the population. Their lands are 20% of the land on Earth. But within that land, there's 80% of the biological diversity on this planet we call Earth. So I hold on to that, and know that we are going on the right path to stand with science, to stand with indigenous and frontline communities who are defending our water, who are defending our rainforests, who are defending our communities for all of us. So I want to actually lead us in a chant, because that's what we do. Our communities are under attack. What do? You say stand up, fight back. Our communities are under attack. What do? Stand up, fight back. Science and research is under attack. What do?
Stand up, fight back.
Science and research is under attack. What do?
Stand up, fight back.
Yes, let's keep fossil fuels in the ground. Let's stand up.
Thank you, Leila. Now we're going to hear from David Karabelnikov. He's Aleut, an Alaska native, and organizer with Idle No More and Digital Smoke Signals.
I'm also recently applied to a PhD candidacy at UC Berkeley. So if there's anyone on the admissions committee here, I hope you favorably. I'm impressed by this talk. I was wondering when I might get one, but we are working hard. And that group studies energy and climate from an interdisciplinary perspective. I think it's the best research group to be able to pursue looking at the 12 and more, almost 100 imminently threatened communities in Alaska that have to relocate from climate change due to coastal erosion, thawing permafrost, and the direct results of human anthropomorphized induced climate change. And yet no federal agency wants to take lead on this. No federal agency feels it's their responsibility to find new site locations for communities that are being displaced. And some of these communities have been in this situation for 30, 40 years, even longer. Since some since the 70s have been saying we need to relocate. It's not safe for us. Where the U.S. government came and built boarding schools at the easiest location for a barge to drop off building materials to start colonizing the minds of indigenous people and taking away the language and the cultures, which also has basis in indigenous science. And if we go back to what we call like the original instructions, which is now talked about in science terminology as sustainability. If you break the original instructions, if you desecrate the sacred systems of life that support life, you are being unsustainable. And it is simply the same thing using different terminology, using slightly different epistemologies, but the result is the same, is that if we destroy our life support systems here, and we the only generation so far yet to be existing in humanity that has the responsibility to stand up and say, no, we will give a sustainable a life, an earth that can carry on for future generations to the next generations. If we fail in doing that, how selfish will we be? We will be the most selfish generation ever. And that is a legacy I do not want to leave. And so I'm happy to be here. I want to recount a very short story of how indigenous knowledge and science, I believe, are compatible and can work together. And that is in our creation story of the Unungan people. The humans were not humans in the beginning. We were cormorants. We were something like a mythical bird. We were flying around in the heavens, and we saw the volcanoes erupting that were making the Aleutian Islands that were going to be our part of creation. And we saw the most beautiful creature, the Aleut woman, was there at the mouth of the volcano, and we flew up to the creator and pled with him and begged with him, please make us to be with her. He says, I can only do it for eternity. He's like, that's all that we want. We want to be with her forever. And so as we came out of the heavens, we came out in our ikiaks, which is our kayaks, our skin boats. They were spiritual, trans-dimensional vessels. Those boats, only a handful of people know how to make them today. There is a nice artifact you can see at UC Berkeley's Hearst Museum. It was taken from Africa in the 1960s without permission. It just was there doing a culture camp. They weren't happy about it. But I want to see that now the digital fabrication has advanced to where we can take biometric measurements, our arms, how long they are, how they proportionally represent us to that boat, and that we can make, digitally fabricated, traditional boats in the way that our ancestors did, and build a relationship both with cutting-edge technology and with traditional and indigenous knowledge. And I think that is the way forward. And I would hope that the Maori have made a good example of having a goal of 1,000 PhDs. So I would hope to all the scientists here that you find scholarships, you find indigenous people to mentor and educate up to the sciences through terminal degrees, so that we can be creating the new wave of knowledge to make sure that this type of catastrophe never happens again in the political and social systems here.
Our next speaker is Andres Soto, a community organizer with Communities for a Better Environment.
Good afternoon, everybody, and it's really a pleasure to be here with all the scientists, particularly coming from Communities for a Better Environment. I'm the Richmond organizer, and we utilize what is called the triad model. We combine community organizing with science and with lawyers. And that's how we go about protecting the health and safety of people in the frontline communities. That's how we go about protecting the workers who work in industries that are producing the chemicals that are killing us and destroying the planet. And so, as I was thinking about this gathering, a couple things came to mind. First is the politicization of science is nothing new. As long as there's been science, there's been politicization. Maybe they came up together. But it reminded me of the fact that back in the 1990s, I was working on the issue of gun control, where we were having, more than 30,000 people a year die from firearms. And the CDC was funding research, injury prevention research centers. One was over here at SF General through the Trauma Foundation. And we produced a document, a 6-page document that just told the facts about gun violence and women. Within 2 weeks, a Republican congressman was waving it around in front of a committee, and the Congress, the Republican-controlled Congress under Newt Gingrich, told the CDC, either you stop doing research on gun death and injury, or you will have your entire injury prevention budget eliminated. And guess what they did? They quit researching guns. And to this date, today, there is no national database on gun death and injury because of the politicization of science. And we know that that's what's going to be happening with this new administration. And just as Layla was suggesting, I think one of the things I want to recommend, because growing up a Chicano in Richmond, California, not only where we have Chevron, but we had police violence because the culture of suppression is part of the strategy of industry when they want to get away with polluting communities like Richmond. They want us fighting each other rather than uniting and targeting them. Well, we came back with an idea called the Richmond Progressive Alliance. And we've taken over the city council. This is the last election. We now have 5 out of 7 council members. And we're going to do great things. It took us 14 years to do it. But we're doing it from the grassroots up. But where we started at, it started with police violence. And me and my family and a lot of other Chicanos on Cinco de Mayo were the victims of Richmond police violence in 2002. Our thought was resistance. We are a resistance movement. And that's what I want all of you to think about. And so I want you to all shout it one time. Resistance. Ready? Resistance. Now, I want you to shout it 3 times in a row, because that's going to make you feel good, and that's what you're going to need to do to take on this fight during the Trump administration. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Resistance! Resistance! Resistance!
Thank you very much.
In just a couple more speakers, I'm going to introduce Dr. Michael Mann. He's a climate scientist and the director of the Earth Systems Science Center at Penn State University.
Well, I have to say, when I hear that expression, the Trump administration, I myself find myself in a bit of denial, as do many of us, I think. And to hear that there has been politicization of science, I'm shocked to learn that that's the case. Well, my co-author Tom Tolles and I stated in our recent book, The Madhouse Effect, which was published just prior to the election, the following: if we are to avert the worst impacts of climate change, we will have to act in the next few years. We will need both the President and Congress on board if we are going to work with other nations of the world to achieve the sorts of carbon reductions necessary to achieve this goal. Well, an election happened since then, and while the result was not the one many of us would have liked to see, the battle goes on. It must go on. Now more than ever, it is critical that scientists step forward and make their voices heard, not just for the sake of scientific research, but for the sake of the entire planet. Quoting from the very end of the book, so we have our work before us, we have our task, we have the oceans to preserve, we have the rainforests to protect, we have farmlands and coasts to defend, we have the panoply of spectacular species with which we evolved to shepherd. This is our home. It's time to start acting like it. Thank you.
Next we have Kim Cobb, who's a professor in the School of Earth and Atmospheric Sciences at Georgia Institute of Technology.
Thanks a lot. It is an honor to be here. I find it an unlikely spot. If you told me I'd be here 5 years ago, I wouldn't have believed you. I don't think any of us believed we would actually be standing here talking about our planet in the ways that we are today 4 years ago. This has been a very humbling year for climate scientists. We have watched the temperatures soar to new heights. It's been a very tough year for me personally, having scuba dived on the reef in the far reaches of the tropical Pacific and watching 85% of that reef die between one of my trips and the next over 6 months. A humbling and gravely disturbing experience to go through. As I was last on my research expedition last month, I got the news while I was in the field. That's for you scientists out there. I was scuba diving the tropical Pacific when it went down. Wow. Now, I didn't have much wherewithal at the time, definitely didn't have the bandwidth to process that. Once my samples got back to my lab safely, and the people that I was in charge of got back to my lab safely a couple weeks later, it sunk in. And it was a shock, getting worse every day. And yet, how many people do we have in here from AGU? We probably have several hundred, and I thank you so much for being here. Thank you. Thank you. But how many thousands of our peers are still in poster halls and lunches with their buddies, prepping talks in their hotel rooms? Too many. We have for too long as scientists rested on the assumption that by providing indisputable facts and great data that we are providing enough of an attack against, counter the forces against science. And obviously that strategy has failed miserably. What we need right now is all of the scientists who care so deeply about their work, about facts and data and truth, to shake off the fear that holds them back from engaging in this space. Not thinking about it as a political problem, but thinking about it in defense of science. Thank you. So I say, whatever is holding you back, if you're a scientist, what are you waiting for? What is the nightmare scenario that will get you out of your hotel rooms, out of Moscone South, out of those nice lunch chairs with your buddies? What will have to happen, folks? Because it's happening. It's time. It's past time. Please join us. Please, let's let our voices speak together. If we do speak together, I'm confident we can change the course of history. Thank you.
So we have a very special final speaker. I want to introduce James Coleman, who's a student at South San Francisco High School and a fellow with the Alliance for Climate Education. And he's going to give you a message from and for the future.
As a current senior in high school, I'm proud to say that I am an aspiring scientist and climate activist. We all have lines we draw that once crossed, we cannot stay silent any longer. For me, it was learning about the protests at Standing Rock, where thousands of indigenous peoples and their allies have gathered to defend their sole source of water from oil contamination. In response to peaceful demonstrations by water protectors, oil pipeline militia and police have retaliated with pepper spray, rubber bullets, mace, and water hoses. These are human rights violations happening right before our eyes. When I found out about Standing Rock, I knew I couldn't be silent any longer. I'm not a politician, I'm not a public speaker, I'm not even a high school graduate yet. But I am a human being whose moral line has been drawn and breached, and through this I have been called to action. I joined the Alliance for Climate Education as a fellow in August, and here I am today, speaking out in front of a crowd for the very first time, nervous but ever determined to push for climate justice. What I'm saying is this: what is your line? Is it when our neighbors' access to clean water is under threat? Is it when our children can no longer experience the ecological beauty that we take for granted today? Is it when the research you've conducted is disregarded as a hoax? Or when every piece of evidence, factual, concrete proof that you've uncovered is thrown away just because it doesn't fit a corporate fossil fuel agenda? I'm here to say that these lines have been breached. And although it may feel scary and foreign to speak out we must. Countless people, including youth like me, are being misled about the threats of climate change every day. It is our collective responsibility, each and every single one of us, to inform the public about the undeniable truth about climate change, so that my generation has a chance at a safe climate future. It is our responsibility to debunk the belief that oil pipelines are a necessity. It is our responsibility to defend scientific integrity. It is our responsibility to hold our government accountable in prioritizing climate justice above corporate interests. And it is our responsibility to never let our lines be crossed without a fight. This isn't something that you can hold off until tomorrow or do the night before. This is an issue of now.
Thank you to all of our speakers. Thank you to everyone for coming out. We're going to close with a few final words. Brant from Climate Truth.
I just wanted to thank everybody one more time. Again, climatetruth.org put this together today, together with the Natural History Museum, to show that when we act collectively, we are strong. And so visit us online, climatetruth.org, where you can sign up. If you like what you heard today, you can participate in the future. If you didn't like what you heard today, give us a call, and we'll work it out. Thank you to all of the scientists that participated, all of our speakers today, all of you that came here. Take what you feel now back into that building with you. Tell your friends, bring them out into the street, and let's make some changes. And with that, I'll give it back to Becca to wrap up.
Thank you. And if you'd like to learn more about us, thenaturalhistorymuseum.org. I just want to close by saying this isn't just about climate science. It's about the fate of evidence-based policies. It's about solidarity for communities that are hit hardest by climate impacts and fossil fuels. And it's about taking a moral stand against the war on science. So I thought maybe we could close with a couple of chants. Water is life. Water is life.
Water is life.
Protect our communities.
Protect our communities.
Stand up for science.
Stand up for science.
Stand up for science.
Stand up for science.
Out of the labs and into the streets.
Out of the labs and into the streets.
Thank you.
Here's the latest Carolina climate news.
Yeah, we are just wrapping up here at this climate rally. Thanks to Penny and I Don't Know More, who invited us to speak here and who we represented on behalf of. I wanted to give a shout out to Dancing Earth. We just saw their beautiful performances combining indigenous knowledge and style and in defense of Mother Earth, and also in solidarity with the Indigenous Women's Treaty on the rights of Mother Earth. And so I'm going to try to pass out some cards so that more of the scientists can learn about the Indigenous Women's Treaty on the rights of Mother Earth. I don't know how many people.
245 right now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Is it on?
Yep.
Oh. Hi, everyone. I'm Leila Salazar Lopez from Amazon Watch. I don't know if you all were watching during this whole time, but Amazon Watch, we're an NGO based here in the Bay Area. We work to defend the Amazon and indigenous people's rights in the Amazon. They are the protectors of the most biologically diverse tropical rainforest on the planet, and without them and the defense of their rights and the defense of their ancestral territories, there will be no Amazon rainforest. And as the scientists say, we're here at a rally to stand up for science. As the scientists say, I should have said this up there, but Antonio Nobre was one of the leading climate scientists from Brazil. He says that already there's 20% of the rainforest degraded in the Amazon. Another 20% are deforested. And he said if we get to 50%, which, the current threats will lead us to that if we don't stop the continued deforestation, the continued dams that are, damming up the rivers, the lifeways of the Amazon. If we don't stop the continued pipelines, the continued extraction, whether that be fossil fuel or mining, if we don't stop the palm oil plantations, which are false solutions to climate change, we will get to 50%. And not to be doom and gloom, but if we get to 50%, there will be an ecological collapse of the Amazon, which, won't only be devastating for the forest and all of the life and the people who live there, but it will be devastating for everyone, because the Amazon rainforest, as Antonio Nobre and as our indigenous allies say, it is a life source of the planet. It is the heart pump of the planet. It controls our global weather system. I can go on and on and on about why the Amazon is so important. So that's why we're working with our indigenous allies all across the Amazon to protect the living forests of the Amazon, protect the rights and the ancestral territories of the indigenous people. And we're working on an initiative to protect the sacred areas of the Amazon and actually to get them designated as sacred areas that are free from extraction. And the IUCN, which is the largest organization of conservationists all around the world, they actually voted. They voted on a resolution that says that sacred areas like indigenous territories, like tropical rainforests, like the plateaus of Mongolia, these are sacred places to indigenous people, and they need to be protected and be free from extraction. So we do have a platform. We have, many opportunities, and I do think that if we work together like we did at the IUCN, 25 indigenous nationalities from all over the world came together to promote the protection of sacred lands. I think if we continue to work together, then that's the only hope I can share for right now.
Thank you for your work. Do you have a call to action or a takeaway message for folks watching?
Well, I mean, as I said here before, I think, we need to stand behind the science that says we need to keep 80% of the fossil fuels in the ground. And yes, there are already, lots of fossil fuels already in development, lots of extraction already in development. So we're not saying cut it off right now. We're saying no more. No more new frontier areas. No more pipelines in Standing Rock. No more pipelines in the Amazon. No more pipelines in the Arctic. That's enough. So we really need everyone to stand with those communities, especially who are saying no more pipelines. clean up these refineries. Let's like promote 100% renewable energy. And that sounds like a grandiose scenario, but we're doing it here in California. They were doing it in Arizona until the fossil fuel industry, and in Florida until the fossil fuel industry took over. So dedicate yourself in whatever way that you can, whether it be with, an organization, whether it be in your local community, but get involved with that call to keep fossil fuels in the ground and promote renewable energy. Right here in California, the majority of oil from the Amazon is coming right here to El Segundo in LA and to Richmond. And so we're calling on a campaign to end Amazon crude. So if you want to get involved with that, you can go to AmazonWatch.org, and we'd love to get you involved.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you again. It's so exciting.
Here if you want to be in touch.
Oh yeah.
Are you here in the Bay Area?
Yeah, I'm local. David and I are working on a project about beans as well as the indigenous ones.
And we're looking for an organizer. Who wants to work on ending Amazon crude.
Awesome. Cool.
We just posted it yesterday.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So for those just tuning in, we had an enormous rally here in San Francisco. We're right across from Yerba Buena Gardens. And we've got a whole bunch of scientists and concerned climate science fans gathering and speaking. So let's see if we can get a word with a few more people.
Wow, you have one floor health department.
Okay.
But that was several years ago.
Well, I'm on digital smoke signals, and my name is horribly long, David Michael Karabelnikov. But my email is Alaska Warrior.
Yeah, I know.
You don't have any sign either. I was like,
That would be perfect for like yeah. You still want to come to talk in like January on policy? I don't know, Hadley.
It's like distributed and dispersed at this point. Like I know folks all over the country.
Sure.
And especially getting the support of the scientists who are feeling that they're being scrutinized.
Antonio Nobre, who is leading one of the
okay, let's see if we can talk to a few more folks.
scenarios right now, but that's our scenario.
Hi, excuse me. Hey, it's a live stream with Digital Smoke Signals. Would you like to say a few words?
Sure.
It's Indigenous Media? Okay. All right. Introduce yourself and you're live.
Sure. My name is Andres Soto. I'm the Richmond organizer for Communities for a Better Environment, and I'm really proud to be here today with all these scientists because science is one of the three legs of the CBE triad of science, legal, and organizing. And of course, I'm Chicano, my ancestors are from Mexico, and so according to the DNA, I'm 41% indigenous, and so that is a very defining element for me as well as for Mexican society. So I see our struggle as a continental struggle, and growing up in Richmond, there's also an historic indigenous Native American community there from the Southwest especially, but then later on the urban migration to Oakland, Richmond, places like that. So I have lifelong friends and people that we still work together, and so we're in solidarity with you. We know you're in solidarity with us, and together we're going to turn this thing around, because we have no choice. It's for our children and our grandchildren, and we know they don't love their grandchildren the same way we love our grandchildren, and that's their bad, but we're going to do what we can for ours. So and that way we'll save theirs too. Thank you.
Any action or call to action or takeaway for folks watching?
Yeah, there's several things. One, of course, is on the national, international scale, we still have to keep our eye on that, stay involved. But here on the local level, we are working on a rule that will cap refinery emissions right now where they're at. The agency, the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, is opposing us. They have been resisting us for 4 years, but we are almost at a decision point. An environmental impact report is being made. So we want as many people who can to show up in May of 2017 at the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. They can get in touch with me, Andres Soto, through Communities for a Better Environment, Andres, ANDRES, at cbecal.org. And we want a really big turnout, because this will be a landmark climate legislation, as well as it will protect the fence line communities, unlike cap and trade, which allows them to continue to pollute, and we have to suffer even more as they start to process this heavier, dirtier crude, which is all that's left out there. And by doing that, on this end, we're helping to minimize the demand over there on the extraction end, like in Standing Rock and up in Alberta, Canada, and places like that. So we're all in this together. So I'm very proud to be here with you today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, we are in San Francisco in downtown, right across from Yerba Buena Gardens. There was an enormous rally of scientists here, seeing if we can get a few more speakers to talk to you folks. Hang on just a second. Do you want to say anything else? I've interviewed two people.
I want to see if I can get to the interview.
Okay.
Hey guys, sorry we are a little crazy here, but I wanted to see if we could interview another one of the scientists here. I thought was pertinent.
I'm very active on Twitter. I go to schools and speak. I write
But there are lots of concerned organizers here. It is thinning out, but we are.
very well, maybe in a different space.
I wanted to talk about this, 1,000 PhDs thing, because I think it would be very important.
Do you actually want to meet John Hart?
Yeah, absolutely.
Come on.
All right.
Tell me your name, David.
David Carabel-Nicol. Christina, I'm gonna go meet somebody.
Okay, do you want me to stop this? Okay. Okay, still looking for a few more folks.
They basically erased the classes carbon footprint for the year. You're talking about 1 reason for each class and more students. And also, all of this problems with that kind of mentality, that kind of can do, as if you're getting a grade, that would be great.
Tell me a little bit about your own research. What is it that you do?
So I reconstruct my past.
Oh yeah, the high school student. Where's he at?
Today, maybe a century, or 1,000 years, maybe even.
I'll put that on the. Thank you so much.
But you never had things so.
Okay, I
Hi
lost
there.
the other reporter. But okay, can't do everything.
Oh, okay.
Did you need something?
Yeah, sure. We're Digital Smoke Signals. We're an indigenous media group. Would you like to say a few words? We've got a couple hundred online.
Okay. What do you want me to talk about?
Just introduce yourself.
Oh.
Why you're here.
I'm Naomi Oreskes. I'm the author of the book Merchants of Doubt, which documents how the fossil fuel industry and right-wing think tanks have promoted disinformation about climate change for more than 20 years. And I'm here to ask everyone around to stand up for science, to stand up against lies, disinformation, and to stand up against the fossil fuel takeover of our government.
Awesome. And if there's a takeaway you want to give folks watching, a call to action, something they can do, what would that be?
Don't get depressed, get to work.
Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. I think that one you. Thank you so much. Can you grab his boss?
Hey.
And you said what your local...
Yeah, we're making a video in partnership with Climate Truth.
Okay.
Just a little recap.
I know you just finished up. Would you mind saying a few more words? Yeah. Okay, cool.
Do you guys
Thank
mind
you.
just going maybe just 10 steps down?
That's
Okay,
fine.
thank you.
So we're Digital Smoke Signals. We're an indigenous media channel. Would you say a few words about who you are and why you're here? You had a great speech, so yeah.
So my name is James Coleman. I'm currently a senior at South San Francisco High School, and I'm proud to be an aspiring scientist and climate activist. I'm here because our world is really in need of climate action against climate change, because right now the way things are going, the government is not doing enough.
Awesome, thank you. And is there something that folks can do, something that inspires you, something you ask your peers to do when you're going back to this end of the school year here, end of the semester?
What I believe is that every single person on this planet can be an activist. Everyone has an activist in them, and it's just a matter of letting it out, you know? Because what I've recently done is, one thing that I'm really inspired by is the Standing Rock, because there are brutalities happening there where people want their right to clean water, but they're getting retaliated against by pepper spray, water hoses in freezing temperatures, rubber bullets, mace, and these are human rights violations happening right before our eyes, and mainstream media is barely reporting on it. Half the country doesn't even know what the NoDAPL is. And what I've done in response to this is I've actually coordinated a Standing Rock supply drive at my school, and I've asked all my friends to donate money and any supplies that they can so that we can ship it over to North Dakota and help the water protectors. And it was really surprising because this was an easy thing to do. I didn't have to go through the principal and have some kind of approval process. I didn't have to make all this paperwork. I just said, hey, I made posters. I said, hey friends, let's donate. I hung posters up, talked to teachers, and we got it going.
That's so awesome. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And we have folks from New Zealand and Spain and Sweden and Nevada, all over the world watching. So thank you again. Yeah, good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Okay, guys.
I do have a card if my purse didn't get stolen. Guys, I'll be right. I can't get
But this is my
Thank you so much.
Please give me a minute now.
Hey, I'm with Digital Smoke Signals today.
Hey,
and,
you look really familiar. What's your name?
Christina Leva.
Okay, yeah. I think we're Facebook friends. Is that possible?
That's awesome. Yes. Would you like to say a few things to the folks online? We've got 183 folks.
Are they there
watching.
now?
Yeah,
oh
yeah.
my gosh, hi, we love you. I can't tell you how inspired we've been by Standing Rock, and we know that Indigenous people are on the front lines of, well, I'm not even going to say on the front lines.
indigenous-led fossil fuel resistance struggles are leading the way. I mean, I just can't say thank you enough. I can't say thank you enough how you've ignited a global movement and inspired people and brought so much new energy to the work that we all do. And let's just keep it going. From the Lummi Nation in Seattle fighting, the oil trains, and Kinder Morgan in British Columbia, and in Minnesota, and all over in the Gulf. Your work is so important, and whatever we can do to help and support it, and thanks.
Awesome. And how can folks get in touch with you, or do you have a call to action or inspiration or anything else you want to share?
Yeah, well, so I'm with the Natural History Museum. We just started in 2014. We're a mobile and pop-up museum that works with scientists, museums, and frontline communities across the country. And we're trying to get these mainstream museums to be more relevant in the context of the climate crisis, and specifically to get indigenous-led fossil fuel struggles inside museums around the country, amplified and adding value and letting more people know about them. So we have a number of partnerships we're lining up in the next couple of years. So we're looking for collaborators. You can get in touch with us at info@thenaturalhistorymuseum.org. We organized a solidarity sign-on letter for Standing Rock and mobilized 1,500 archaeologists, anthropologists, historians, and museum professionals to sign on, fighting for indigenous sovereignty, tribal rights, cultural heritage, sacred sites, historic preservation, and we just want to continue to bring these communities' experiences and cultural capital to bear to support and amplify the resistance that you are leading. So thank you.
That's so exciting. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's very similar to like having traditional knowledge and even indigenous science, if you want to call it. That these fields are pretty close to each other, and like the field of ecology could not have been come up if all of the indigenous people had been wiped out. There would be no field of ecology. There wouldn't be. But now we have a field of ecology, but there's not enough citations of where they actually got that information from, in terms of traditional ecological knowledge and the interconnections of those systems. Citing is important. We learn that, in higher education, and we should do that as professional scientists if we're going to, and it's not like science has been impervious to white supremacy. Science has been, infiltrated by white supremacists in the past. It has been used for those purposes. It has been used in anthropology and archaeology to minimize indigenous peoples and devalue their cultures, rather than treating them with the reverence and that you would of any other community or cultural of a people's. So I think that my hope here is to see that out of all of this would be that like the Maori have done in New Zealand, is that we have a strong initiative to see at least 1,000 Alaskan Native, Native American, Indigenous, First Nations PhDs, come into the program during the Trump administration. And so that these people are on the track to having and influencing science in the world that we are going to create, not the one that we have unfortunately been saddled with, because of an election. Because if we don't, and you look at Standing Rock and you see, tens of thousands of people came together to stand in solidarity with, I went out there 10 years ago. I helped a friend, she needed help to get a ride out to Standing Rock. She says, like, you want to go to Standing Rock? I'm like, when do we leave? And she's like, in the morning. And I'm like, oh my God, like, it's okay, let's go. Like, and I went there and that family took me in, and they gave me a star blanket, and so
This guy's especially interesting.
when their community was faced with being this catastrophe coming, this pipeline coming right, just a mile above their water intake. We had to do something. We can't just say, oh, there's more pressing things going on. And so, and I think that we have grown into a national movement where if we can bring the activist community, the indigenous community, and the scientific community, those are three communities that have very specific dimensions of decision-making, influence, and power, and also morality, and also conviction of doing the right things, and also being the first inhabitants of this land. So with that moral burden, I think that we can form a cross-cutting coalition that will outlast the Trump administration's impacts. At least that is the hope. I mean, that is what I'm here for.
What would you, this is my last question, what would you most like the people who voted for Trump to understand?
Well, I think that they are frustrated by the situation, and they have been, unfortunately, the mainstream media has fooled them in large degrees, is that they gave Trump, 83 minutes to Bernie's 1 minute. If the media had been fair, and if, where were all the Hillary supporters when Bernie was getting 1 minute for Trump's 83, and the statistics showed, the poll showed that Hillary was more likely to be beat by Trump than, Bernie had a 20-point lead coming out of the convention, and yet the Democrats just did a face plan. I mean, it's like they're just, for what? And where are we at now? And now it's the indigenous people that have to lead us out of this? We don't have resources. We don't have lots of PhDs. We don't have the cushy benefits of the tax plans that from Obama. What came from Obama? NoDAPL came from Obama. So, I think that I don't know. Trump supporters are for the large part low information voters, or they are the people, the 1% who will benefit from him, and they are expanding his demagoguery to take more from people who have lost a lot. You look at the income levels from World War II, 1950s to now, and those white people lost a lot of money. They had good middle class realities and lives, and now they're in the dumps. Their lives are in the dumps, and so they want something else, but they're not getting. They're not going to get what they anticipated from Trump. They're going to get a lot of demagoguery, and finding a more substantive path forward. Probably comes from having people who are dealing with a sense of conviction, people who aren't just making up rules to suit themselves in the moment. And also that real prosperity can be had, and the indigenous people have always sought to further that. When they were their backs against the walls, the cavalry on their lands, and they were forced to sign over treaties, the things they negotiated was, we want education for our young people, we want health care for the people, we want these basic things to provide in a way that the United States government currently does not. And because our leaders thought of the future generations, of what are we going to leave for other people. And if you're not thinking about that, then you're an incredibly selfish human being.
Thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks for your work.
Thank you.
Can you say your names? Some of the folks on the feed are asking, but we know you.
I am David Michael Karabelnikov, and you can find me on Facebook under Alaskan Warrior. And yeah, I am an admin on Digital Smoke Signals, and we are happy to, support, Myron's work and be broadcasting here from San Francisco and sharing a little bit about the connections here. And I hope that I am doing justice to this cause.
People love you.
I'm trying to help. I work with a lot of inspiring people. Here is one of the people I admire too. So
So I work with Becca at the Natural History Museum, and it's very much, you're talking about bringing together these important decisions. There you go. Platforms for science education, platforms for knowledge, and so seeing the role of how much we need that right now, and how can we bring together museums that are willing to do collaborations with indigenous people who are facing making that message really heard and bringing together scientists, like indigenous leaders, people on the front lines, and using the museum as a platform. So just like hearing you talk about the coalition.
Yeah, I know Stuart Hawkinson up at University of Washington, and he's at the museum there, so I'm happy to make an introduction, and he's done really incredible work. And I was carving my first mask, and he came into the native carving studio, and I looked at him, and I told him how I was unhappy about the lack of symmetry, and he was like, put his hand on my shoulder, and he was like, "Don't worry, David, symmetry's overrated." And he, and he's a Harvard graduate, PhD, MacArthur, genius native guy, like it was just like, it was really like, cool to hear him like, don't take it so seriously.
I'll be 30 seconds.
I love your work! Oh my god!
Well, first because we're waiting on. So
We can get someone up.
No, it's
Yeah.
okay. Like, I'm starting a podcast.
Can we grab your interview now?
Okay.
Yeah.
Where do you want to go?
I'm
gonna get it.
Any touch to her and get her information?
Absolutely.
Cool. I thought you got a card.
I think I might be out. Being no scientist, we're just not like a card, carrying entity. But
Well, Peter follows you on Twitter. So
We have talked a little bit.
yeah, great.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of yours, obviously. So you're a big inspiration for me. And yeah, so he's coming to Mason. We're gonna. That's where I am. So.
Yeah, so you can find me on
Yes.
Twitter.
Yeah, I can DM you. I think.
Totally, yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Great. Awesome. I love your work. Just so inspiring.
Hey,
hi.
Can we talk with you a second? I'm with Digital Smoke.
Am I the only one with the lab coat still on?
No,
I'm feeling out of place. Let me just...
Hey, we are finishing up the last interviews at the San Francisco rally.
Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Kim Cobb, Professor of Earth and Atmospheric Sciences at Georgia Tech.
Great.
And thank you so much for your talk here. And we have a lot of folks watching on the Digital Smoke Signals channel, which is indigenous media on the front lines. And we're just wondering what's inspired you in this process, and also we're asking folks what calls to action they have for folks watching.
I guess I was originally inspired by watching some of the early pioneers in climate science engagement, those very few climate scientists who went out on a limb to speak about climate change and climate science and the choices that we have and how important it is and what will happen to our planet. And watching them just bear the brunt of just withering, orchestrated, well-funded attack machines. And I just couldn't sit by. This was back when I was an early career scientist. And so while I had a lot of fear in opening my mouth and saying things aside from these data show that and my lab does this, I've been getting more courageous through time, and I've been getting better at achieving my goals in communicating climate science and the climate choices that we face. And whenever I go around and speak to the public, without fail, people come up to me and say, you made it much more clear to me. I appreciated how you didn't overly politicize it. I want to talk to you more about that. Or I have these questions I don't understand. And it just drives me forward. Every single time I get out there and take a risk, I'm rewarded. So today's been no exception.
Well, thank you for your courage. It's not easy to step out there, but we really appreciate it.
It was a lot of fun, and thanks for coming and covering this.
Thanks. David's giving his interview down there. Very San Francisco. Check out this beautiful mural. We're blessed in San Francisco to have such beautiful, beautiful street art.
They can cope with it by using these strategies that we have used, I think, effectively. So that is my hope to see is that also what the Maori are doing in New Zealand with their part of the is having a call to come out to 1,000 to build graduate 1,000. I think it was 500 at the time. They're up to 1,000, but they're only 5 million people. But 1,000 PhDs or graduate degrees, and if we had that, we're 300 million people though. So we would have several thousand, like Standing Rock, 10,000 people at a commencement ceremony in 7 to 10 years. That says that they beat like that. Then he stops. No, he doesn't want to go anywhere.
Unfortunately, yeah, we're running out of time.
Okay. So but this is I guess one of my biggest dreams. I did this as a TED Talk 5-10 years ago. And the hope was to see thousands of indigenous Alaska Natives, American Indians, indigenous First Nations of the North Americas, and of the Americas really, to get those educational backgrounds that they could speak authoritatively on those topics. And they could also bring in their cultural insights to those fields. That would be my strongest desire to come out of this epoch in science history and U.S. presidential history and political history, is that we do have lots of learned experts here, and that I could go to a place like this and see that many Native people with advanced degrees, not